Welcome to Green and Red, Scrappy Politics for Scrappy People, a regular podcast on radical, environmental and anti-capitalist politics, brought to you by Bob Bazanko and Scott Parkin.
Welcome to the silky smooth sounds of the Green and Red podcast. And I'm your co-host, Scott Parkin, coming to you from Berkeley, California. And as always, I am joined by
Bob Bazanko in Niles, Ohio, the happiest place in the world.
The happiest place in the world. I would actually maybe argue the White House was the happiest place in the world this week, Bob, because despite what the fake news media and the lying, stealing, fraudulent Democrats say, it was a big week for Trump, and he won. And so, folks, we're doing a little bit of a scrappy weekend review. And so if you're listening to this, you probably already listened to our episode on Cheney. So we probably won't talk too much about the other significant event this week, which is the passing of Darth Vader, Dick Cheney. But we are going to be talking about something that happened on the same day, which was Election Day. We'll be talking about some other stuff too.
Yeah, it was just a great day for Trump. It was so good that one of the guys in the Oval Office yesterday, a health company executive, actually fainted when he was contemplating just how great things were for Donald Trump.
My favorite story, though, is that the Republican senatorial breakfast that they had the day after Election Day, where Trump threw all of the press out and got into a screaming match with Lindsey Graham about how the Republican Party is going to be a dead party if they don't actually do something to solve the government shutdown, because that's why they lost in such a big way on Tuesday.
Did Lindsey or Trump say that?
Trump was basically saying that if he had been on the ballot, that Tuesday wouldn't have turned out the way it was. And Lindsey Graham is basically arguing that the government shutdown is what really screwed them.
Oh my God.
I'm not getting that story 100% accurate, but something like that. It was a big cat fight. It was a big cat fight.
I would pay to see that. I would pay to see a cat fight between Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump. I would absolutely. That'd be like Fraser and Ali, man. So anyway,
I think Trump was also saying that they need to kill the filibuster too. That they need to do away with the filibuster.
He's been talking about that for a long time.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this in a minute, because right now the kind of media, the liberal narrative is that you're finally seeing pushback from Trump. But they've been saying this for 10 years, so we'll see. 10 years ago, Cruz and Graham and J.D. Vance were calling him Nazi and a Hitler, and it hasn't stuck, so we'll see. But obviously, if you're on the left, and you can define the left any way you want, the big news came out of New York City this week when a very young Democrat, somebody who identifies as a Democratic Socialist, openly Muslim, obviously, candidate, is going to become the next mayor of New York.
First mayoral candidate to get over 1 million votes since John Lindsay in 1969.
Zohran, was it Kwame is his middle name? So Zohran Kwame Mandani?
I believe so, yeah.
I think so, yeah. Anyway, and obviously on the left, which is something we're interested in, a lot of people are obviously very joyous. I'd say most people are really happy about this. Even people like you and I who are not part of Democratic coalition are happy about this. And then there's a lot of uber lefties who are just continuing to condemn him because he's not ready to storm the Winter Palace or whatever. What do you think? It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing that he beat Cuomo. And he talked openly about Israel and genocide and affordability and immigration and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a politic where John Roberts, Amy Coney Barrett, and Brett Kavanaugh are considered the centrist bloc on the Supreme Court. And so we're seeing where these institutional politics have moved to the right in a significant sort of way. And so the fact that New York, in a huge turnout in what they're calling a blue wave, I don't actually disagree with that, how many people voted, turned out and elected a Muslim, Ugandan-born Democratic Socialist who didn't shy away from that, actually embraced those labels and those identities, was elected in New York. And it's because he talked about issues, right? He talked about affordability. He talked about rent. He talked about groceries. He talked about the buses being free for New Yorkers. And any interview, any debate, any video you watch with Zohran Mandani from the last 6 months, he never really talked about himself that much. He actually talked about New York and New Yorkers and how to make the city more affordable to live in for those people. Whereas I watched a video yesterday of an early debate from the Democratic primary where he also won, where he beat Cuomo and a number of other people. And he was talking about, they said, they asked all the candidates what was going to be the first country that they visited on their tour, and they all said Israel. And Mamdani's, I'm going to be working on New York, not on Israel.
I'm going to be in the 5 boroughs.
I'm going to be in the 5 boroughs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's pretty significant. He
But
won
the
over
question,
30%.
though, is-
He won over a third of Jewish voters in New York, too, which is also important.
The real question, though, is he better looking than Trump?
Yeah.
Because Trump insists that he's not.
Yeah.
Who does that? Who looks at this guy and that's the person, he's not as good looking as me. He's a Democrat. And so I think we have to take that into account. It's the kind of Democrat who I think historically we've been able to live with. He's not Chuck Schumer. He's not Nancy Pelosi. Should we have a moment of silence for her? Nancy Pelosi is retiring, thankfully. The queen of performative politics. It's not a bad thing. I don't see how you can look and say, it's a bad, would we be better off if Cuomo won, endorsed by Trump and Bloomberg and Giuliani? Mamdani won. He won big. He won fairly easily. And I think the fact that he didn't run from those labels is really critical because the Republican Party openly embraces the craziest shit imaginable. And they have for a long time. They've had openly, literally neo-Nazis and Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and Klansmen and January 6th people. And no one ever calls on them to repudiate them. And yet centrist Democrats, I kept seeing the word, today people were referring to centrist left, the center left. There's no such thing as a center left in America. There's a right, there's a further right, there's a crazy right, and even crazier. And then you have Donnie, who would be, it's funny, he's actually I think he's pretty similar to someone like John Lindsay from the 60s, that kind of liberal, kind of New Deal, still that old New Deal liberal mode. But he won, he galvanized people, he got the majority of every demographic vote except for white men, I believe. I believe that's the only group he didn't win, but he won Latino vote, the black vote.
Massive amounts of the youth vote.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I think the issue now, and I'm not the biggest advocate of elections and electoral politics, but that momentum and that energy needs to continue. Too often liberals want to go to brunch, and that's how you sustain it. We've talked about that before when people like Castro used to do that in Cuba. Chavez did that. You mobilize people. And you keep mobilizing them, which is what the Republicans do, right? They're outraged about everything that ever happens. Liberals are at brunch. And hopefully, if he can, Wall Street isn't going to just roll over for him, but if he can make the subways a little bit better and get some housing for homeless people, do something about the food prices, just to make people's lives somewhat better. There's nothing wrong with that.
One thing I'm curious to see what you think is one of the let's call it debates that I've seen in the last couple of election cycles is persuasion election versus turnout election.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that the 2024 election was very much like a turnout election in many ways. And the Trump people figured out actually just how to do turnout of people who are less likely to vote, right? Especially young, apolitical men, for example. But this one also turnout seemed to be very important, like what I just said, or what we just said is Mamdani turned out a million votes, got a million votes. But the other thing I'm wondering about is that Mamdani actually seemed to have a persuasive side to what he did. And there's a lot of people in which he won over. Now, I'm not talking about New Jersey and Virginia, and we can talk about that as well. Yeah. But Mamdani, they're saying that people, 7 or 8% of people who voted MAGA actually supported Mamdani.
Yeah, he got about close to 10% of the Trump vote. Trump voters were his.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there's not as many. There's probably more of them in New York than I realize in the 5 boroughs, but still. But it just seems like there was, at least with the New York mayoral election, there was a persuasion element to it because he didn't talk about himself, and he talked about issues that were affecting New Yorkers.
Yeah, he didn't talk about transgender kids in sports. He wasn't talking about, So he's not Gavin Newsom in that regard either, but who apparently had a great. Then no, it's very similar to 2016 when a huge number of people were equally impressed with Trump and Bernie Sanders. A lot of people in 2016, that was anecdotally, I heard it, but polls showed that too. And remember, Bannon and Trump, that was their fear that Sanders would become the Democratic nominee that year. Mamdani talked about the cost of living for the most part, and he talked about the genocide. And it reminded me to some degree, and forgive me for saying this, to Obama in '08. Obama, first of all, there was clearly Clinton fatigue, which the Democrats just ignored, right? And they ran her in 2016 after she'd been repudiated. And go back to 2008. Nobody knew who Obama was. You have this 2-year senator named Barack Hussein Obama from Illinois, and he defeated Hillary Clinton. That should have been a freaking canary in a coal mine. And what was his main issue? The Iraq War. The Iraq War, right?
Yeah.
And I think Mandani, to that degree, is followed that pattern. But it was absolutely an issues-oriented busing and food and cost of living, and very positive campaign too. This is a great place to live. Let's make it better.
The other interesting thing, you're talking about the Clintons and Mandani, is that I think Hillary was actually on a podcast, like a Zionist podcast, if I'm not mistaken, right before Election Day, and they asked if she was going to vote for him, and she's, I can't vote here. But it was like very disparaging of Mandani. Schumer never endorsed Mandani. He extended him thanks on the election night, but he would never even discuss it. And Jeffries was also like didn't endorse him until the last minute. And then Jeffries has also been like somewhat disparaging of Mandani's victory too. The other thing that the Democrats do is they don't talk about it. I don't want to call them the centrist, the leadership, the Democratic leadership, and the sort of big figures in the party, except for Obama, who is, I think, sees a bit of a kindred spirit, and it was big in the New York Times the weekend before the election that Obama had actually reached out to Mandani. I'd actually seen those stories before too, and whatever. Obama, not Mandani, droned teenagers, and he bailed out the banks, and so there's nothing good I can say about Obama, but I do actually feel like he understands the politics of what's happening now better than the Clintons or Schumer or whoever.
He has great political instincts. The further away from it, it's stunning that this guy became president. Like I said, 2-year senator.
4 years. I think it was 4 years. But
when he announced, I think it was only 2.
Oh, yeah.
I think he started running in '06, right?
Yeah.
African-American, Kenyan roots, Barack Hussein Obama, that's stunning. And he defeated the existing dynasty at that point, right? So he has great political instincts. Yeah, of course, now he's more content to just be out there with Geffen on his yacht, that kind of thing. But no, what's ironic, though, the Democrats, who were very silent about Mandani, certainly had their voices when it came to promoting their candidates in like Virginia and New Jersey. We'll talk about the one thing, and we've said this a million times, and I don't think you can say it enough, right? The Democratic Party runs away, right? So Trump calls somebody a radical left or a Marxist order, and they run away from it, right? And they've always done this. If at the end of the Cold War, if they had simply engaged that issue instead of attacking people, they were handmaidens to McCarthyism. That wasn't just a Republican thing at all. We've talked about that, right? So the Democratic Party for 80 some years now, let's just say since the Cold War, has embraced that idea. That's a bad thing if you're left or if you call yourself a socialist or if you want national health care, right? Republican Party has no such constraints. You can say the craziest right-wing shit and they embrace you and the media embraces it. And when the media says the extreme left and they equate like Mandani and AOC with the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and all that, that's not just the media fucking up, which it is, but it's the Democrats letting them do it because they embrace that. So without any evidence, what's like in 2024, we lost because we transgendered. No, you didn't. There's no data. The only data I've seen about 2024 is Gaza. Gaza defeated them. I believe that. Right?
Yeah. That's a funny thing you said, because you said before we went live before we were live, is that Trump is saying it's because I wasn't on the ballot, which he was on the ballot, believe me.
Oh my God.
But also the important, like you said, the important person not on the ballot, which actually did make a difference, was Kamala Harris or Joe Biden.
They're not, exactly.
Yeah.
The fact that because again, if you look at polling, and it's out there, and you and I are junkies in that regard, we always look at those post-election data. Trump isn't a popular guy. He never really has been. But
he's got the lowest approval ratings ever.
They're like, soon they'll be in Nixon territory.
And on issues, it's even lower.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like on the economy, it's 27%.
Oh yeah. Even immigration is way like
that's his issue, and that's his issue.
And that's his issue. And
it was actually on those two things, on the economy / inflation and immigration, that he got elected in last year on.
Oh sure. I don't think I don't know if the Democrats even care about how much they're hated. Like, even with Trump's like desolate numbers, they're no worse than the Democratic parties.
Yep.
And they don't get that, or they don't care. I don't know. Zohran Mandani isn't going to take down Wall Street. There's zero chance of that happening. Wall Street's going to be fine. Historically, Wall Street actually does better under Democratic. There's a long, we can do a show on that sometime because it's something I actually studied for a long time. The Democrats have always been the party of Wall Street. They've been the party of finance, capital forever. In trouble. What did he suggest that? What was it? A 2% tax over $1 million? That's not going to break them.
Chris Matthews in 2020 basically talked about how if a Democratic socialist were elected president, that they were going to be lining people up in Central Park to be shot up against the wall, motherfucker. And somehow I don't think that's what's going to happen starting on January 1st.
There's probably a lot of people who would encourage Chris Matthews to be put in that line. So.
I think he was talking about Wall Street people, bankers, but yeah.
And, look, he's not a dumb guy. And he knows like what he's up against. I don't know what people are expecting. It's not a revolutionary situation. If he can like get some people housing, do something with food insecurity, make the buses, make the trains run on time. It's not a bad thing. I mean, I don't think it's not like we're settling for liberal ideas. It's just things are bad out there. And the idea that you're going to either vote them away is preposterous or you're going to flip them overnight. That's just not going to happen.
Hey, the one thing I think we should turn to is the other two big races. Actually, I want to talk about two other mayoral races real quick. One, which was Fatah in Minneapolis, who actually lost. He lost to Jacob Fry, who's, I guess, going to win in his third term, who was actually the Minneapolis mayor who presided over the murder of George Floyd. Fatah lost. Fry had some experience at beating challenges from the progressive left in the past.
Well, Fatah would receive the DFL nomination, but then did they pull it back or they took it away or something?
Walls, some other Democratic establishment people pulled it back.
It was Walls, yeah. No, it was the governor, absolutely. Who, compared to most Democrats, isn't the worst, but
no, they definitely didn't want a Somali DSA guy elected mayor.
They're already tolerating Ilhan Omar. They can't have two of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Good
and then actually is the Seattle mayor race where a progressive, I don't think she identified with DSA, but she's a progressive. And they actually haven't called that race, but I was just reading this morning that she's actually pulled ahead. Her name's Katie Wilson. It's Seattle, right?
Yeah.
But in Seattle, in many ways, is very similar to here in the Bay Area, which is we have this really all-powerful tech sector with a lot of wealthy people. And then we have a very progressive population in the city. So just want to flag that's actually very, very interesting thing.
And even in Georgia, there were two Democrats took Republican seats on
one statewide race.
Statewide races was like the energy commissioner or something. I can't remember, but yeah.
And in Mississippi, they broke the supermajority and they flipped 2 or 3 state Senate seats, I believe. And but I'd actually been reading the DNC, fuck the DNC, but they'd actually been dropping a lot of money in some of those Mississippi races so they don't get screwed on the census.
That was, what's his name? Howard Dean's idea, 50-state strategy.
Yeah.
But the big ones were obviously next door in New Jersey and in Virginia, where the Democrats ran their fantasy candidates, who've been for a decade now, they're fantasy candidates, national security candidates, right?
Yeah.
Mikie, Sherrill, and Abigail Spanberger. And they are the future of the Democratic Party. They're
the Rahm Emanuel candidates, really.
Rahm Emanuel candidates, right? Mikey, I think. Mikie Sherrill was a graduate of Annapolis and was a helicopter pilot in the Navy. Spanberger was in the CIA.
But we don't know exactly what she did.
She won't, which is that's part of the deal. You don't talk about it's like Fight Club, right?
Yeah.
But she was in the CIA, never talks about what she did. But more importantly than that, because that's what Democrats go for, the veneer, the gild of it all, GILD, right? But beyond that, these are very moderate conservative candidates, right? They're all in on aid to Ukraine and they're pro-Israel and they believe that the Cold War basically never ended. They're certainly not going to advocate national health care or those kinds of issues. They're not like Mandani, and which, as you pointed out, they got a lot of congratulations on election night from people. Buttigieg tweeted out congratulations to them, never mentioned Mandani. And that was par for the course, I think.
Spanberger also kind of shit-talked Mandani right before the election, too.
Oh, she after, what was it, 2020, she went on this rant blaming the Democratic Socialists, and I don't ever want to hear the word socialism again, and this and that. And most people listen to this because Rachel Maddow and the MSNBC clowns repeat it, and pretty soon it becomes like truth, even though there's no data to back that up. There just isn't. Yeah. People want healthcare. People want aid to Israel to end or certainly be reduced, right? You know what they want. It's there. It's in numbers. And yet the Democrats contrive other things. I've never seen a poll where they listed the most important issues in 2024 where transgender kids in sports was anywhere near the top. Like, it was like 4% of people thought it was like one of the more important issues or something like that. But it doesn't matter because the Democrats have contrived that because they don't want to change themselves. They don't want to quit drinking, basically. They don't want to quit their whatever it is.
One thing I'd actually be curious about with Sherrill and Spanberger is how supportive they are of Israel, at least how supportive they are. I'm sure that, because both of them are out of the House of Representatives, so I'm sure both of them supported a lot of those, give money to Israel,
Sure.
Let's denounce anti-Semitism. But one of the interesting things that we're really seeing in Democratic parties is that, like, longtime AIPAC-backed members of the Democratic Party are actually backing away from AIPAC.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious, I don't know if you know anything about this, but if Sherrill and Spanberger actually were big
I don't know
supporters.
specifically. I think they took AIPAC money. Now, there's what's interesting in the earliest stages of the Michigan Senate race, which is, I forget the name of the guy retiring, but there is what I would call an insurgent candidate there who I believe may be Arab himself. And he's doing fairly well. The typical candidate, the Democrat candidate, what's her name? She's a state official now, I believe, in Michigan, but she's all in with AIPAC and she's foundering. She's not doing well at all.
Oh, Spanberger's taken over $500,000 from AIPAC.
Who has?
Spanberger.
Spanberger. Okay. I totally believe that. What's striking, and I think we're going to get to this toward the end, who is responsible to I think, a significant degree for breaking through this AIPAC stranglehold? Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
Now, we do a whole show on her because that's weird shit. But I don't think it.
Sherrill's taken over $180,000 from AIPAC.
Yeah, and so they're Democrats. They are the kind of Barack Obama Democrats of 2025, or the Bill Clinton Democrats in 1992, the kind of Clinton imagery. That's who they are.
Yep.
They're not Mamdani, and Mamdani made this possible for them. That's the thing. Like, Democrats all over the country. You sent me a thing not long ago, a survey. Was it the most popular politicians of both parties in America? It wasn't just Democrats. It was Democrats and Republicans both. Trump's near the bottom of that list. But the very top, like Bernie Sanders was first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where he's been like for the last 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
Mamdani was in the top 5. AOC was in the top 5, right?
Yeah.
And Schumer and Jeffries, I believe, were below Trump. And they were all way they were the caboose there.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, all of the sort of more establishment figures, I don't remember Obama being in that, but
I don't remember.
But like Harris and Biden and Schumer and Jeffries were all like Gavin Newsom were all pretty like low on the list.
I mean, to some degree, I think just something as banal and simple as just age and appearance matter. Like Spanberger and Sherrill are, what, about 50? Late 40s, 50, right?
Yeah.
You have a party of fossils.
Spanberger's 46, Sherrill's 53.
Okay. So you have a party of fossils. And I think just having a different face out there matters, right?
Yeah.
Pelosi is retiring, which, thank God, they'll replace her with another corporate Democrat from the Bay Area.
For folks out there, if you follow Ken Klippenstein, this is actually one of the big things he likes to talk about is the gerontocracy within the Democratic Party and the Republican Party too. But he really harps on it with the Democrats.
Now, Republicans over the years, like, they brought in, they're crazy people, but they have Boebert and Gates and Green and Tim Scott, who's disappeared now, except when Nancy Mace has a meltdown. And
Klippenstein actually has a great new piece in Substack actually about how they tried to blackball him from the House or from the congressional offices because he had basically named how Feinstein was just like wandering around in a haze and that her staff wouldn't let her wander the halls alone.
And the Republicans embrace these people, right? They embrace Gates, they embrace Boebert, they embrace Green, all of those people, right? Whereas the Democrats distances up from the squad from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And look at, they got rid of David Hogg, and they're just like, so there's this a lot of politics is superficial in America, let's face it. It ain't about who has the best platform. So a lot of it is superficial and just the appearance of some youth and energy. JFK understood that. Clinton understood. Obama understood that. I mean, the people that the Democrats would look back on fondly. Even Jimmy Carter in 1976 embodied that.
Right.
Are people who were more youthful, they had energy. Biden was just this addled old man. Trump is more addled and crazier even. Just to some degree, just the symbolism of having younger people up there can't hurt. But Mamdani actually gave people, I don't think people went there. You know, the Democrats' basic line is, you want Trump? It's not like we're great. It's look at what they got. Whereas Mamdani's whole campaign was, look at what I'm going to do for you. Vote for what I want, not against what they are, right? And I think that makes a huge difference. Sherrill and Spanberger, it's a lot more of the same. And the thing, when people say a purity test, very simply, to me, the problem there is when these people are elected, it's great that they're elected. Fine. If you want people who you think are electable, great. But when they're in office, they don't do shit. They don't make life better for people. And so they don't last and they create the backlash. You want to get rid of that backlash. It doesn't have to do with, it's not about trans kids in sports. It's about giving people what you tell them fucking they need. But Mamdani actually is able to make life a little bit better. That's what matters. That's what makes you electable. Giving people what they need.
Yeah. It's really interesting is that there's the people who you just named in that poll that I sent you a while back, ranked at the top, are those who like lead with the class interest element, right? They talk about affordability, they talk about healthcare, they talk about education, they talk about housing.
The oligarchy.
Yeah, the oligarchy, all of that. And it's really just important to note that's what makes you popular with the people that are being polled. And we don't have to go into this too much, but the sort of DEI, woke politics, which often, at least the right tries to put that on the DSA types. Actually, it's not really them who are like really promoting that. It's more the establishment, right?
It's that's corporate ideology. DEI is corporate ideology.
Yeah, exactly. Like all those books that we saw a few years ago are basically they're like corporate HR DEI initiatives, like how to be like not be so racist, that sort of thing. Yeah. So I think that is an important thing. But the right wing also is like they're pretty good at fundraising and riling up their base around all of that stuff too. And
absolutely.
And make no mistake, they're going to do that with Mamdani.
Oh, absolutely. Again, you go back like Trump in 2016. And even last year, at the end of the day, did talk about it's bullshit. It was absolute bullshit. I suspect people hearing it knew it was bullshit. But he talked about making lives better for people. Like you go to Youngstown, which I've said a million times, right? You go to Youngstown. People there didn't want anything to do with Clinton. They just wanted Hillary Clinton. Bill and Hillary Clinton are the reason Youngstown became what it was as far as they're concerned. So they want to hear about it. And Trump did talk about that. He visited Youngstown like 6 times in 2016. And I don't think Clinton even went there. No, that's what matters. If you can do that, and people said Biden provided this and that, you sure as hell wouldn't know it. Sure as hell, there's no way you would know things got better with Biden, whether they did or not. There's no way you would know that.
Yeah.
And when Trump obviously has an advantage because he does have a huge core of people who don't really give a shit what he says or does. They're with him no matter what. They're ride and die, man. They are, if you've ever been on a motorcycle, they're his ride and die bitch. They really are. And no matter what, this guy he could piss on them and tell them it's champagne and charge them for it, and they would fork it out. But that's not the majority of America. It's just not. And
a good idea for a show would be to have our friend Jason Miles come on and talk about some of the class versus like DEI stuff.
It's DEI. It's a corporate ideology. It's based on the idea that we need to expand everything. You expand the market, you expand your workers, you do all that kind of stuff. But in America, it's the same. Look at the immigration issue right now. That's a labor issue. Immigrants are here working and they're being seized at their workplaces, right? Yeah. And the Democrats turn it into a moral issue. Oh my God, Trump's putting babies in cages. Only we're allowed to put babies in cages. It's not a moral issue. Obviously, the treatment now, obviously, is horrific, but it's a fucking labor issue. No one ever dealt with it that way. And the unions, for a long time, the unions were just as bad. Yeah. Right? They were nativist as anybody. The last thing, I was going to say,
go ahead.
I was going to say, in your part of the world, you had a big Tuesday night too, right? Gavin Newsom is now an even bigger rock star, isn't he?
Yeah, the Prop 50, which is basically put California redistricting on the ballot. Trump basically convinced Texas, Missouri, North Carolina, all to redistrict Democrats out of office. Bye-bye, Jasmine Crockett. And so Gavin Newsom in response, and I'm hearing that Spanberger is going to move on this pretty quickly too, but we're also now seeing Democratic states actually move in response because the Republicans basically are trying to make it so they don't lose the House in 2026. And so Prop 50, which was on the ballot, won by 65% of the vote. In San Francisco, it got 84% of the vote. Here in Alameda County, I think over 75% of the vote. And so I guess there's a lot more MAGA people in Alameda County than I realized. But that's a big thing. Newsom said that he's going to decide after 2026 whether he's going to run for president. He's been running for president for a while.
He's been running for a long time, yeah. I mean, his media game is top shelf, but otherwise it's pretty empty. He's pretty empty. But
yeah,
this is the kind of shit liberals love. They die for this shit. I mean, in terms of like actually resisting Trump, Pritzker has done way more. Chris Van Hollen in Maryland is pretty impressive. These guys ain't Debs, right? That's Mandani, but it's pretty striking. At California, again, it was it was a bad night for Trump. And Trump was on the ballot. Nobody voted without thinking about Donald Trump.
The other interesting talking point is that Vance and Johnson have all said, these are blue states and blue cities voting for blue candidates. Virginia actually, in 2021, Youngkin won the Virginia State House.
The lieutenant governor and the attorney, yeah.
Spanberger.
Isn't that one of the statewide offices in Virginia was a Muslim American, wasn't it?
Yeah, the new lieutenant governor is the first Muslim American one elected to statewide office.
Yeah.
The guy who was elected attorney general had been like mired down in a scandal.
Oh, yeah. He was making jokes about killing his political opponents.
Yeah, exactly. And
whereas Trump actually does that.
Yeah, exactly. And he still won by 5 points, right?
Yeah.
The other thing
now and then, like I'm pretty desolate. Obviously, I'm very desolate. But every now and then, you think Americans ain't as bad as you think. This does get through, which is really remarkable considering there's really no one like Labor or the Democrats actually like throwing it in front of them. They're doing this on their own. They don't have Fox News telling them what to think every morning.
Yeah. The one thing I'll throw out there, the last thing that just throw out on the politics stuff is the GOP civil war, which is currently happening, which is shaking up the Heritage Foundation apparently. Yeah. And there's a whole lot. We could do a whole show on this stuff actually because we talk about this quite a lot. But you want to just throw it out, talk a little bit about Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson.
It's hilarious. I'm fascinated by all this. I was actually, for a while now, I've been fascinated to some degree by Tucker Carlson, but even more by Marjorie Taylor Greene, and not just in the kind of car crash sort of way, like you want to see it, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene is onto something, but there's been this war brewing between Nick Fuentes and the Groypers and Charlie Kirk. And Fuentes and Kirk split on many issues, including Israel. One of the conspiracy theories is that Kirk was coming around and starting to not support Israel as much. And this also involves like Candace Owens and a lot of people. But the point is, Tucker Carlson platformed Nick Fuentes, who's an avowed, open white supremacist neo-Nazi. And then the head of the Heritage Foundation gave a very resounding defense of Tucker Carlson platforming Nick Fuentes. Then you had the Republican establishment up in arms and apoplectic, people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and others who are saying, we cannot platform Nick Fuentes and neo-Nazis, right? Now, missing in all this, which I bring up ad nauseum, is that Nick Fuentes was Trump's guest at Mar-a-Largo. And there was no Republican Civil War then. There was no outcry. There was no division then. It just happened, right? He was there as Kanye West's guest. In fact, Kanye and Nick Fuentes and Trump ate dinner together, right? Everything was fine, right? Now the Republicans are suddenly aghast that this guy, and I got to believe that a lot of this just has to do, I suspect this is really about Israel, because these folks, Carlson, who's batshit white supremacist, absolutely, but on Israel, he says things that really no one else will say. No Democrat, even AOC and Sanders aren't going to say the things that Tucker Carlson says, right?
Yeah.
Is he really anti-Semitic? Could be. And same with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I find like fascinating because she's not only talking about Israel, but she's talked about like healthcare, Obamacare,
Epstein Files.
What's that?
Epstein Files.
Epstein Files. She's all over that. She claims she's going to read the names of the men in the Epstein Files. She's talking about the men in the Republican Party. She's playing this feminist card, right? She's very critical of aid to Argentina. I think she actually said something about the attacks on Venezuelan boat and the boats in Venezuelan waters, too. Mistaken. I wonder, because maybe, like I've noticed, especially in the last few days, people are going after Trump a lot more than they ever did now. But I wonder if Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of had an antenna up and realized that this might be the moment. Maybe I won't be surprised if she wants to run for president. Trump told her not to run for the Senate because she could win. But
Right.
she's talking a lot about like her constituents and people who are suffering and people who are struggling. And at one point she said the people need to make a revolution, right? Now, if Mamdani said that, people's heads would explode. But it's really, it's a civil war, but it's not about neo-Nazis and white supremacists. They're fine with that. They have no problem with white, they embrace it. That's who they are. But I suspect it has a lot to do with like this growing anger at Israel. And
She came out and said, they asked her who she would vote for in the New York race, and she's, I would absolutely never vote for Cuomo.
Yeah.
Which is like very contrary to what Trump and Elon Musk and Nosferatu.
Yeah, she said, I'd vote for the Republican candidate. And again, I don't follow it that closely, but she's also, I think, toned down the craziness lately. Like she didn't go out like Boebert, wears this like hideously racist, like Halloween costume. And she seems to have backed off from doing that. She's been on she was on The View with all those like liberal women and Bill Maher. And it's funny because in the last few weeks, I've heard so many people say, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Jon Stewart had said it, right? And Jimmy Kimmel. And like a lot of people are like shocked, right? Because she makes sense.
Yeah, she's definitely moved. I am a diehard believer that she's going to make a play for 2028. She's making a play for the other thing she talks about. What's at the thread in all of this is that she talks a lot about, and because it's the first stuff she started saying that started making sense, which is our government puts Israel first. What happened to America first? And she talks, and they're coming after her, like AIPAC's coming after her.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important is that the thread is I'm the real America first campaign. Yeah. I'm the real America first candidate, right? And she
says that every time now. America first. That's
the important thread here. And she's definitely going to make a play. Like Trump's weak. There's rumors that Trump could die. There's Trump's out in 2028.
Lots of prayers.
Like she's definitely making a play to be like the next MAGA leader.
But I mean, she's not only spoken about money in terms of Israel, but she's talked about like the children of Gaza being starved.
Yeah. No.
And you hear Schumer and Jeffries say that.
No.
Honestly, I'm not being like, I say a lot of stupid shit, but honestly, is there any difference anymore between her and Fetterman? Like legit, I don't think there really is.
Yeah,
I don't think there is.
It's very pro-Israel. There's a big difference, but
actually. No, my joke lately is she's running for the 2028 nomination as a Democrat. No, I think like Mamdani, I think is a repudiation of Trump, but you can say, oh, it's New York, blah, blah, blah. But I actually think, and the reason like I've been getting shit for months now. Like, why do you keep praising Marjorie Taylor Greene? It's like, dude, I'm not praising her, but it's really important to show this juxtaposition between what she's saying and what Democrats are saying. And what it means is she thinks, or her people or whoever, and I always thought they were dumb as a boot, but I don't think so. I think they actually do understand politics better than I gave them credit for. They think there's an opening here, right? They obviously think that. And if they think that, then that's a big deal, right? Yeah. Democrats aren't going to do anything, but if she can cleave that, if she can create that fissure, which is what we talk about half the time we talking about fissures and cracks and things like that. And she, for whatever reason, understands that. And maybe it's Tucker Carlson is working with her. I'm not suggesting she's not smart enough to understand on her own. I don't think any of them are all that smart, but for whatever reason, she's figured that out. And it's worth seeing. And the other thing it does is it should embolden you. If she can do it, so can I. If she can do it, we can put pressure on Schumer. We can put pressure on Jeffries. We can fucking go up to Cory Booker and these people, Spanberger and Sherrill. Put the pressure on them right now. Marjorie Taylor Greene can do it, then you can do it.
It should be noted that polls that came out late summer, early fall said that only 7% of Democrats polled support Israel, support Israel's genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
And we have seen very little cracking of that sort of Israel solidarity within the Democratic Party, but we're starting to see it. Like Seth Moulton in Massachusetts has basically said he's not going to take AIPAC money anymore. We're starting to see it crack a little bit.
And he's running against, what's his name?
I think he's going to run, he might run for Markey's Senate seat.
Yeah, Ed Markey. And Markey's not the worst, but...
Markey 78, also one of the gerontocracy, right? But I think it should be noted that a huge, over 90% of Democrats polled disagree with the party's support of the Israelis. and yet the institution's not moving like it should. We've had similar, it's not, the numbers aren't as stark as they are with the Democrats, but with the Republicans, we've also seen that sort of shift as well.
Yeah.
And I think Green is like really tapping into that. And that's why, and
Yeah.
like it's Ted Cruz and it's like people like that who are like really coming out after her.
Yeah.
And partially because they're like so in the pocket of the Zionists.
Well, Cruz has said what she's a liberal Democrat now, or he's called her a liberal.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah. The most unlikable person you could ever imagine, Ted Cruz.
Oh, God. Yeah. No, it's really something like liberals love to attack the Republicans. Like Trump is, people who vote for Trump are the ones getting hurt the most by him. Trump ignores them. And it's true, right? He's closing hospitals in rural areas, doing all that kind of shit, right? The Democrats have done the exact same thing. They've looked at the people who are their core constituents and said, fuck you. We don't really care what you think. Not just on Gaza, but on pretty much everything. You want healthcare? Tough shit, right? You want this? Tough shit. You want gun control? Tough shit. They're not willing to fight for anything. And the thing is, like, and Newsom, whose politics are not any different than Biden's, really, Newsom has this veneer that he's willing to fight. And at the end of the day, shit like that matters. Like, 'cause so much of this is about, it isn't really about substance. It's about symbolism, and he gets it. Pelosi succeeded for years that way. Pelosi was the most performative bullshit in the world, dumb bar Nancy, but Trump hated her and thought she was like, I don't know. But anyway,
he came out with some pretty harsh words for her yesterday.
Yeah, she was the worst there.
The evil person who ruined our country.
Has he put the flags at half staff yet for Dick Cheney?
Yeah, still waiting. The other thing I just want to say, what's going on in the backdrop of all these politics is we have 42 million people who lost their food stamps last Saturday. Actually, a judge ordered the Trump administration to start giving people money for food because it seems like the administration's strategy of starvation of people on SNAP was not really going their way. As we saw
while you're having your Great Gatsby theme party with possibly underage women running around Mar-a-Largo.
And building a $300 million extension on the White House, the gilded ballroom. And then the other thing I just want to put out there, and we could do more on this in the future, is that like the Tesla board actually voted to support Elon Musk and getting a package that will put him very much on track to become the first trillionaire. And while we have these kind of politics happening and unraveling of coalitions and ideologies and things like that, we have this class war going on. 42 million people lose their access to food benefits, right? And then we also have someone put on the track to become the first trillionaire in history. And so I think that's just an important thing to keep in mind. And I also want to shout out to like our homies in Austin who actually blocked entrance into the Tesla Gigafactory in protest of Elon becoming the first trillionaire.
And that the SNAP benefits is also an issue that really, I think, resonates with a lot of people. Like you see, right, including Marjorie Taylor Greene's brought this up, right? A lot of people who normally you would certainly not consider whatever, Democrats, liberals, or a lot of people are saying, dude, you can't starve people. They can't eat. These people need food, right? And the food banks are being overrun.
And the government shutdown, the other essential kitchen table issue is that the Republicans don't want to extend a tax credit for healthcare. Yeah. It's going to make people's healthcare literally grow exponentially about 5 times.
Tenfold. It could be in some cases even
5 to 10 fold.
And again, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I guess her kids are on Obamacare, right? And she's talked about the subsidies for that, right?
Yeah.
There are openings and there are ways to go about this, right? If you want the revolution tomorrow, probably not going to happen. I keep going. There's a great scene in Reds with the brilliant Diane Keaton as Louise Bryant, where she's testifying before Congress and one of these crazy kind of right-wing representatives says, are you a revolutionist? Are you a carnival? When is the revolution coming? And she looks at him and says, right after Christmas. It's not coming right after Christmas. If you're waiting for that, then okay. But in the meantime, giving kids food ain't a bad idea. It's not a bad.
It's interesting. We just did this interview, which I don't think will come out until after this goes live, but where we talked with Clinton Fernandez about the coup in 1965 and the Indonesian Communist Party, which was like 16 million members, was actually didn't have armed militias, didn't have armed wings. And so therefore that's why they got so wiped out when Suharto came in. But it's interesting that their strategy was to work within the system and push for land reform and things like that. And, that's actually an effective strategy, except unless the right-wing military takes over and like kills everybody, which we also could be happening here. We're like pushing back on that. It's important to note. But still, I think that sort of like being radical within the system and pushing, like I'm all about system change. I'm all about revolution, but also in the moment, like 42 million people children, a third of which are children, are like without food benefits. And so that's an important thing to act on.
And the majority of SNAP recipients have a job. They
I
work.
just want to say I'm not a reformist liberal. I just want to say that. But I just also do want to say that I think people need to eat.
Yeah, exactly. The most people on SNAP are actually working. You have a significant number of those people are senior citizens or children, right? Yeah, you can't starve people as part of your agenda, especially when that agenda is nowhere near occurring at this point.
Yeah.
There's an old story. One of the founders of the British Labour Party was a socialist named Keir Hardie, who was a union leader and not a radical by any means, but he was walking down the street and there was a beggar there, and his friend was going to hand him a coin, and Keir Hardie grabs his hand and says, "Don't give that to him. You're delaying the revolution," right? We're not delaying the revolution by feeding kids. It's not a bad thing. And Zohran Mandani's not really a socialist, but he's trying to make life better for these folks in New York, and that's not a bad thing. And he's setting an example, which I think is important. Anybody who can show you that it's okay to take on Trump, that you can do it and you can do it successfully, that's important no matter what.
I think to circle back to Mamdani, I think his acceptance speech was actually pretty important because he basically is, President Trump, are you listening? If not, turn up the volume because I want you to hear what I have to say.
Yeah.
To paraphrase. And I think.
And Larry Krasner said the same thing in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And quoted Mamdani.
And quoted him. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just think he's definitely going to push back because Trump has made all kinds of threats, everything from getting Mamdani deported to cutting off federal funds into New York. And so I think it's important that it's like, we don't have someone who wants to compromise. We don't have someone who wants to try and make a deal, which is the current Democratic leadership. Although they seem to a little bit more.
Mamdani scares them. I think he scares those guys for that reason.
He seems to have. They also seem to have a little bit more fire in their belly since the election too. I heard they were actually about to give in on the government shutdown and have backed off from that now.
Cuomo and Ackman haven't moved yet.
Yeah, move off to Florida, right?
Dershowitz still there?
Yeah, Dershowitz still around. Hey, though, I want to close on. I think we're at the end here, unless you got anything else.
No.
So the day after Election Day was the 170th birthday of a socialist, actual socialist,
Real socialist,
which was Eugene Debs. And Mamdani actually quoted Debs in the second sentence of his acceptance speech, which I thought was awesome. But also want to pay a big tribute to Eugene Debs. 170th birthday. His birthday was November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
The Ohio Socialist Party at the turn of the century had an official chant, and it was "Ripsaw Bang, we belong to the Gene Debs gang. Are we socialist? I should smile. We're revolutionists all the while." So, happy birthday, Gene Debs. May your spirit live forever.
Yeah. While there's a lower class, I am in it. While there's a criminal element, I am of it. And while there's a soul in prison, I am not free. You've been listening to the sweet and sultry sounds of the Green and Red podcast. If you'd like us, please check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you are listening to an audio platform, give us a rate and review. And if you really like us, go to greenredpodcast.org and hit that support button or become a patron at patreon.com/greenredpodcast. And we will talk to you again soon. Oh, and make trouble and misbehave too while you're at it.